I am CS Satyapriya Jhalani from Ratlam. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome all of you to today's webinar on safeguards and opportunities for chartered accountants arising from DPDP Act. As we all know, DPDP Digital Personal and Data Protection Act is a relatively new act. So we'll be hosting our today's seminar on that. On behalf of the organizers, I extend a warm welcome to all our distinguished keynote speaker, respected panel members, fellow professionals, and all participants joining us today. Before we proceed further, I would like to take this opportunity to invite the chairman of CAIRC, CA Ankur Goyal sir, to kindly share a few words with us.
Thank you very much, Satyapriya bhai. A very respected Dhaval Kothari ji, Treasurer, CIRC. Very respected Anand Jain bhai, Sikasa member, CIRC. And very respected our speaker, Siddharth Agarwal ji from Mandsaur, my younger brother. Respected leaders of the profession and respected members. In today's scenario, as we all are aware, that DPDP Act is going to be implemented completely by 2027, tentatively 13th May 2027, wherein this act will cover all the data protection things regarding our offices, our clients' database, all these things. हम लोग आजकल अपना डेटा क्लाउड पे रखते हैं, हम लोग आजकल डेटा ईमेल के थ्रू शेयर करते हैं, व्हाट्सएप के थ्रू शेयर करते हैं, हम लोग बहुत सारे डेटाबेसेस बनाते हैं अपने पास, बहुत सारी चीजें होती हैं हम लोगों के पास जिसको हम लोग स्कैटर्ड डेटा भी कह सकते हैं या इंफॉर्मेशन भी कह सकते हैं। तो ये इंफॉर्मेशन बहुत जरूरी होती है डम्पस्टर्स के लिए, जो किसी को हैक करना चाहते हैं या जो जो कुछ इंफॉर्मेशन कहीं से निकालना चाहते हैं उनके लिए। तो यही सब चीजों को देखते हुए, यही सब चीजों का एनालाइज करते हुए हमारी गवर्नमेंट इस डीपीडीपी एक्ट को लेकर आई, और जिसका इम्पैक्ट सबसे ज्यादा हम चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स के ऊपर इसलिए लगता है क्योंकि हमारे पास सारे क्लाइंट्स का डेटा होता है, हमारे पास सबकी वो वाइटल इंफॉर्मेशन होती है शायद जिसके बेसिस पे वो बिजनेस रन कर रहे होते हैं। तो अगर हम उस डेटा को ही प्रोटेक्ट नहीं कर पाए या नहीं कर सकते तो पेनाल्टीज इसमें छोटी मोटी नहीं है सर, बहुत ज्यादा बड़ी पेनाल्टीज हैं जो हमारे एमिनेंट स्पीकर सिद्धार्थ भाई हम लोगों को बताएंगे। हम लोगों को वो ये भी बताएंगे कि किस तरीके से हम अपना डेटा प्रोटेक्ट कर सकते हैं, कौन से प्रिकॉशंस हम लोगों को लेने चाहिए, कौन से स्टेप्स हम लोग फॉलो करें जिससे हम लोग भी सेफ रहें और हमारा डेटा, हमारे क्लाइंट्स भी सेफ रहे, जो आज का नीड ऑफ द आवर है। तो मैं इसी कड़ी में अपना सबसे पहला वेबिनार के लिए वेलकम करना चाहता हूं आप सबको, और मैं ये उम्मीद रखता हूं कि हम अपने इस टेन्योर में आपको वो सारे वेबिनार्स के थ्रू इंफॉर्मेशन पहुंचा पाएंगे। एक छोटे से छोटे शहर के छोटे से छोटे नए से नए चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट तक हम लोग कुछ इंफॉर्मेशन शेयर कर पाएंगे, और अगर हमको लगता है हम अपने इस वेबिनार सीरीज के थ्रू अगर आप तक वो इंफॉर्मेशन पहुंचा पाए तो हमारा टेन्योर सफल हो गया। क्योंकि वेबिनार एक ऐसी माध्यम है, एक ऐसी मॉड्यूल है जहां पे हम मोबाइल के थ्रू, लैपटॉप के थ्रू आपके ऑफिस तक पहुंच सकते हैं, जबकि फिजिकल सेमिनार्स जो होते हैं उसके लिए आपको कहीं जाना पड़ता है, आपको आने जाने का समय निकालना पड़ता है और बहुत सारी चीजें होती है, चैलेंजेस होते हैं कि आप कहीं बिजी हो, एंगेज्ड हो। तो अभी वेबिनार के थ्रू आप कहीं पे भी बिजी भी हो तो आपने उसको चलाया, आपने एटलीस्ट सुना और कुछ भी आपको मिला तो हमारा ये वेबिनार सीरीज सफल हो जाएगी। तो इन्हीं एक्सपेक्टेशंस के साथ मैं आपसे मेंबर्स से और भी रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि हमारे वेबिनार सीरीज को जरूर ज्वाइन करें, और हम लोग इसमें आगे कोशिश करेंगे कि और नए नए एवेन्यूज, नए नए मेंबर्स को, नए नए स्पीकर्स को इंट्रोड्यूस करें और आप तक हम इंफॉर्मेशन मैक्सिमम से मैक्सिमम पहुंचा पाए। इन्हीं वर्डों के साथ मैं अपनी वाणी को विराम देता हूं। थैंक यू सो मच, थैंक यू सो मच।
Thank you, Chairman sir, for your kind words. We would also be honored to hear a few brief remarks from our esteemed regional council members and the dignitaries present here today. In this sequence, I would like to invite CA Dhavalji Kothari, who is also the treasurer of our branch, to please share a few words with us.
Thank you, respected chairman of CIRC, C. Ankur Goyal ji, my council colleague C. Anand Jain भाई, आज के स्पीकर सिद्धार्थ अग्रवाल जी। आज का जो टॉपिक सीआईआरसी ने चूज किया है ना, वो बहुत अच्छा टॉपिक है और राइट टाइम है हमारे ऑफिस में उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करने का। गवर्नमेंट ने एक 18 मंथ्स का विंडो दिया था उसमें से ऑलमोस्ट काफी टाइम जा चुका है। अगर हमने उस विंडो का बेनिफिट नहीं उठाया तो आने वाले टाइम में हम लोगों को बहुत बड़ी परेशानी आ सकती है। जैसे चेयरमैन साहब बोल रहे थे कि इसमें एक बहुत बड़ी पेनल्टी है, छोटी सी पेनल्टी है, बहुत बड़ी नहीं है चेयरमैन साहब, सिर्फ 250 करोड़ रुपए की। वो जीरो से 250 करोड़ नहीं है, डायरेक्ट 250 करोड़ रुपए। अगर हमने 250 करोड़ पर ध्यान नहीं दिया तो पता नहीं क्या क्या चीजें हम लोगों को छोड़नी पड़ेगी अगर हम लोग इसके लिए अवेयर नहीं हुए। और छोटा सा छोटा क्लाइंट, ऐसा नहीं है कि कॉर्पोरेट क्लाइंट होगा तो ही हम लोगों को ये फॉलो करना है। अगर छोटे से छोटा क्लाइंट है और उसने अगर हम लोगों को अपना पर्सनल डेटा दिया है और वो हमसे कहीं से भी लीक हो गया तो बहुत बड़ी परेशानी में आ सकते हैं। अभी हम लोगों ने देखा ही है, इधर से हम एलएलपी रजिस्टर करते हैं, इधर से हम कंपनी रजिस्टर करते हैं, और जिस क्लाइंट की मेल आईडी दी हुई होती है उस मेल आईडी पे कुछ इंफॉर्मेशन चली जाती है बैंक अकाउंट ओपन करने की। जो कंपनी लॉ से रिलेटेड बुक्स है वो बुक्स परचेज करने के लिए। तो वो डेटा आता कहाँ से उनके पास? वो डेटा निकलता हम लोगों के ऑफिस से ही है, जहां से भी निकलता है। पर वो निकलता है और निकल कर हम लोगों को बहुत परेशान कर सकता है। तो आज सिद्धार्थ जी हम लोगों को बताएंगे कि हमारे ऑफिस को कैसे हम सिक्योर करें ताकि ये 250 करोड़ रुपए हमें ना देने पड़े। थैंक यू। और आप लोगों से सबसे एक ही गुजारिश है, जो हम लोग वेबिनार प्लान करते हैं उसका अगर आपको फ्लायर मिलता है, लिंक मिलता है, तो प्लीज आप अपने ग्रुप में भी शेयर करें, क्योंकि जितना हम इसको शेयर करेंगे उतने मेंबर तक इंफॉर्मेशन पहुंचेगी। और हम चाहते हैं कि सीआरसी के लास्ट कोने तक हम लोगों का वेबिनार की इंफॉर्मेशन पहुंचनी चाहिए। थैंक यू। ओवर टू यू।
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. I would now like to invite our Sikasa Chairman, Sir C. Anand Jain, sir.
Thank you, SP Bhai. First of all, Sikasa member, not Sikasa chairman.
So sorry, sir.
Not an issue. Respected chairman of CIRC, Ankur Goyal ji, my very good friend, brother, Dhaval Kothari ji, treasurer, a very humble heart. Our past chairman, Ankur Gupta ji from Jaipur. Our panelist, Siddharth Agarwal ji, who will be addressing today's webinar. And all the distinguished participants who have joined today on the very first day of this week, Monday, in spite of having busy schedule in filing of ITRs. I would not take much time. I would like to add whatever has been said by Ankur Goyal ji and Dhaval Bhai. पहली चीज धवल भाई ने बोली 250 करोड़ की पेनल्टी है. इट इज अप टू 250 करोड़ बट फॉर ईच वॉयलेशन. So if you are violating for 10 times, it may be increased to 250 crores, 2050 crores. So we must be careful whatever data we are sharing, whatever information we are having. So आज का जो वेबिनार है उसका मेन टारगेट जो है वो ये है कि हम समझें ये एक्ट जो है ये किन लोगों के ऊपर एप्लीकेबल है. सिर्फ इंडिविजुअल्स पर लगेगा या कॉर्पोरेट्स के ऊपर लगने वाला है, सभी लोगों के ऊपर लगने वाला है. अगर चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट के ऑफिस में आर्टिकल ने गलती की तो चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट पर पेनल्टी लगेगी, आर्टिकल के ऊपर लगेगी. हम लोग हमारे क्लाइंट का डेटा चैट जीपीटी पे बहुत इजीली फ्लोट कर रहे हैं. डेली बेसिस पर हम लोग डेटा डाल देते हैं, तो वो जो डेटा जीपीटी पर या पब्लिक डोमेन में जा रहा है उससे रिलेटेड हमारे ऊपर कितनी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है. एज अ चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट व्हाट मेजर्स वी हैव टू टेक कि हम इस तरह की कोई पेनल्टी नहीं लगे हमारे ऊपर, हम लोग इस तरह की पेनल्टी से बचे. कैसा हम लोग क्लाइंट से डिस्क्लोजर ले सकते हैं, कोई डॉक्यूमेंट साइन करवा सकते हैं ताकि हम जो डेटा यूज कर रहे हैं उसके लिए हमारे पास अथॉरिटी रहे. तो सिद्धार्थ भाई मेरी आपसे रिक्वेस्ट है कि आप मेंबर्स को साधारण भाषा में जितना इस एक्ट को समझा सकते हैं समझाइए. प्रैक्टिकल क्या यूजेज हो सकता है, हम थ्योरी पर कम जाना चाहेंगे. प्रैक्टिकली आप बताइए कि एज अ सीए हमारे ऊपर क्या प्रॉब्लम्स है और उससे बचने का रास्ता क्या है. समस्या सब बताते हैं, आपका काम है समाधान बताना. तो आज का वेबिनार हमारा जो सक्सेसफुल होगा. विद दिस आई वेलकम ऑल द पार्टिसिपेंट्स हु हैव जॉइंड दिस वेबिनार एंड थैंक यू चेयरमैन सीआईआरसी and all the distinguished members for hosting this webinar. And of course सिद्धार्थ भाई जो कि रेगुलरली बैचेस ले रहे हैं और उन्होंने आज बहुत शॉर्ट नोटिस पर, जब मेरी बात हुई उनसे तो उन्होंने कहा नहीं आनंद भाई मैं लूंगा, और बहुत शॉर्ट नोटिस पर किया. जो पार्टिसिपेंट है मैं उनसे भी रिक्वेस्ट करना चाहता हूं कि आप में से भी अगर कोई मेंबर वेबिनार लेना चाहता है या एज ए स्पीकर खुद को डेवलप करना चाहता है, प्लीज रीच आउट टू अस. हम आपके लिए सेशंस ऑर्गेनाइज करेंगे और सभी लोगों को हम लोग चाहते हैं कि मौका मिले. सो विद दिस आई वेलकम यू ऑल. थैंक यू सो मच. थैंक यू वंस अगेन. ओवर टू यू.
Thank you, Anand bhai. Now, I would like to present a brief description of our faculty for today. We are privileged to have with us today.
भाई भाई सत्यप्री भाई, मैं एक बार रिक्वेस्ट करता हूँ हमारे पास्ट चेयरमैन अंकुर कुमार गुप्ता जी से, जो प्लीज अपने भी कुछ वर्ड्स ऑफ विजडम हम लोगों को साथ शेयर करें।
थैंक यू अंकुर भाई, चेयरमैन सीआरसी। बट अपन ज़्यादा टाइम नहीं लेते हुए, दोनों हमारे फेलो फेलो मेंबर ने, आनंद ने और धवल ने बहुत अच्छा एलिवेशन किया है और अच्छे प्रोग्राम कर रहे हो आप। तो अपन ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा टाइम सिद्धार्थ जी को देना चाहेंगे। तो ओवर टू सिद्धार्थ जी, और बहुत अच्छा प्रोग्राम कर रहे हो आप, कंटिन्यू लगे रहो सब। थैंक
Thank you, sir.
थैंक यू, थैंक यू।
Proceeding ahead, we are privileged to have with us today a highly accomplished chartered accountant and a law graduate who qualified as a CA at the young age of 22. He brings rich expertise in taxation, succession planning, real estate laws, data protection laws, and artificial intelligence. He has also completed specialized qualifications including DSA, FAFD, artificial intelligence, data protection compliance, and audit certification from ICAI. In addition, he has served as a professional director of one of Madhya Pradesh's largest urban cooperative banks, handling a business portfolio of around 1300 crores, and is also an empaneled peer reviewer with ICI. He has been actively associated with ICI as a faculty and keynote speaker on subjects such as DPDP Act, artificial intelligence, digital accounting, assurance, and professional development. His blend of legal, technological, financial, and governance expertise makes him the right person to guide us on today's topic. Without further ado, I would like to now invite our speaker, C.S. Siddharth Agrawal, sir, to please take the mic. Welcome, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Thank you, Satyapreet ji, for such a wonderful introduction. Special thanks to CA Ankur Kumar ji Goyal Sahab, Chairman CIRC, CA Anand Jain ji, RCM CIRC, CA Dhaval Kothari ji, Treasurer CIRC, CA Ankur Kumar Gupta ji, past Chairman CIRC, and all the leaders of the CIRC who are doing a great thing in empowering our members and enriching our members. CIRC is continuously organizing webinars and helping the members. So I request also all the members to please take benefit of the initiatives of the CIRC. Now, before I start, I will just ask a question and I request all the members to please reply that question in the chat box. Why we think, if any one of you thinks that GST is an opportunity, income tax is an opportunity, RERA is an opportunity, or any MSME is an opportunity, I am telling you DPDP is the biggest opportunity than any of these laws. Now, why? Can anyone answer this me in the chat box, that why DPDP is a bigger opportunity than income tax, GST, RERA, MSME, or whatever practice you are doing? Anyone if can answer in the chat box, I will be so grateful to all of you if you can chat. Data privacy penalty is huge. One answer is there, penalty is huge. Penalty is, yeah, Rahul Mishra ji is rightly answered, it is applicable to all. What it means by it is applicable to all, thank you Rahul ji for a correct answer. Applicable to all means it relates to every personal data through which every data through which an individual can be identified. Every data through which an individual can be identified. So any data by which you can identify a person, for example, Aadhaar card, for example, PAN card, for example, bank statement, for example, location, for example, address. Any data which helps you to identify a person, and if you are collecting the data in digital form, and even if you are collecting it in physical form and later digitizing it, then also the DPDP Act is applicable. So the first thing I told you that to build your interest, so that if any one of you is thinking that it's a new law and it's not applicable to me, sir, first we have to save ourselves and then we have to enrich ourselves by monetizing it by consulting our clients, right? So with this, I will start sharing my screen. Kindly confirm if the screen is visible. Is it visible, sir?
Yes, sir, it's visible now.
Yes, perfect. So this is our session, Safeguards and Opportunities for Chartered Accountants. Now, why I had specifically titled it as Safeguards and Opportunities for CA? Because first we have to save ourselves that any kind of penalty that is being imposed in the Act is not applicable to us, that we save ourselves from the provisions of the Act. And the next is, when we can save ourselves, then only we can guide our client and we can save our client. So I hope the screen is clearly visible to everyone. And I request Satyapri sir, if any
Yes, sir.
question arises in the chat box, you please mention that question to me so that we can answer the question at
Definitely, yes.
single and hand to hand, so that the session will remain interactive. Right? If you see any
Yes, sir.
question in the chat box, you please mention it, right?
Definitely, I'll pin it up for you, yes, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So it is safeguards and opportunities for chartered accountants. So this is the agenda. What we will study today: a DPDP Act background and key terms of the Act, key players in the data ecosystem, that who are the key players that are involved in the data ecosystem, 4 safeguards for CA firms. These are only the 4 safeguards that we will study here. There are a lot of things that we have to keep in mind, but the 4 basic safeguards that as a chartered accountant, each one of us should employ in our office. Professional opportunities for CAs, a very important thing. Whenever we study anything, the first thing that comes into mind is how we can get benefit from this. So how we can use this DPDP Act to pitch our clients to generate revenue. Then real life case studies, we will see some real life case studies, and we will have a quiz that will help us in testing our knowledge. And then the action plan and way forward, that how we have to go forward. Now, why DPDP Act matters? That is very important. As Anand जी and Dhaval ji has given a context that 18 months का time government ने हमें दिया था that you improve your practices. So the DPDP Act was followed by a Supreme Court ruling, that is in relation to Puttaswamy judgment, that recognized privacy as a fundamental right. That was the whole basis behind this DPDP Act. So 2017 that judgment was passed, and in 2023 in August 2023 the act was enacted. And in November 2025, the rules were notified. 13 November 2025 is the date on which the DPDP rules were formally notified by the Ministry of Information and Technology, MITI. And then after November 25, they had phased the act in a staggered manner, that some of the things of the act are applicable from November 25, some of the provisions are applicable from November 26, and all the provisions of the act are applicable from May 27. 13th May 2027 is the date on which all the provisions of this act will become applicable. So we have effectively, I think, around 10 to 11 months to still improve our practice. Objective: give individuals control over their personal data while enabling lawful processing for business. It happens that many times when we use a service, then someone asks us to give a feedback form, for example, and we cannot deny it. For example, I was traveling in the train today. I was coming from Bombay, and suddenly the cleaning staff of the compartment came to me and said, "Sir, I need your feedback, and for this I will send a OTP to your phone." Because that feedback will be recorded through, after verifying you from the OTP, I immediately denied it, that I don't want to share my personal data, my phone number, with the cleaning staff. So this is why the DPDP Act is enacted, that we can exercise our right to control the data that is in our possession. So with this, we will move to the now, what is personal data? I had also given a hint. Any data by which an individual is identifiable. Now the word used is individual. If the data relates to a corporate, and if that data of corporate nothing is related to an individual, then that data is not a personal data in the definition of Act. Right? If any data of a corporate in which nothing relates to an individual, then the data is a corporate data, then data is not a personal data as per the provisions of the Act, because it is not in relation to an individual. So word uses individual. Very carefully that word they use. Any data by which an individual is identified. The word uses individual. Now, what is can be the personal data? PAN, Aadhaar, phone, email, salary, health records. These are some of the illustrative example of personal data that is a direct identifier, like PAN, Aadhaar card, phone, email, salary. Now, this PAN and Aadhaar, if they are in physical form, then they are not covered under the ambit of DPDP Act. But the moment we take the picture of PAN, or the moment we scan the PAN, or we upload the Aadhaar on anything, then it becomes digital data. Indirect identifiers in the act, there is also mention of indirect identifiers, though which cannot directly identify a person, but which can help in indirectly identifying a person, like address and location. And even in the act, they have covered pin code also as an indirect identifier. And so a pin code can identify thousands of individuals at a single go. Now, data principle. What is the data principle? As a chartered accountant, we are collecting n number of personal data from our client. And whenever we are collecting any data from the client is a data principle. What is the definition of data principle that we have to understand? These are the basic terms of the act that is very important for us to understand, so that the whole concept of act you can understand in a better manner. I also request Satyapreet sir to please have a look at the chat. If there is any question, kindly update me.
Yes,
Data
sir.
principle.
I'm looking at the chat. I will
Yes,
let you know as soon as
sure,
a question pops.
sure, sir. The individual whose data is processed. Individual whose data is processed. So whose data is in our case? We are collecting the data of our client. So our client is the data principal. Why? Because the data belongs to the client. So the individual whose data is processed, that is our client. Data fiduciary. Now, who is data fiduciary? Fiduciary we have studied in the contract act, data fiduciary capacity. For example, a CA is having a fiduciary capacity in relation to client, a doctor is having a fiduciary capacity in relation to patient, and a teacher is having a fiduciary capacity in relation to student. So we have student that fiduciary. So from that fiduciary, this is what data fiduciary is derived. Entity that decides purpose and means of processing. This is the definition of fiduciary. It is not that who collects data. The definition is that decides the purpose and means of processing. If we are collecting the data of our client and we are not processing and we are not deciding the purpose and means of processing, then we are not the data fiduciary. But if we are not collecting the data from our client, but we are the person who are deciding the means and purpose of processing personal data, then we are the data fiduciary. So thing is clear. If we decides the means and purpose, what is the means and purpose means? What data will be collected, how it will be collected, and why it is collected. Very simple. What data you are collecting? Suppose you are filing an income tax return of your client, then you decide what you want, like salary slips, 26As, bank statement, some other financial records. So you are the person that decides what data you want, and how you collect, that also you decide, and why you collect, because you require specific fields to be filled in the income tax return, and hence you require that data. So whenever as a CA you are collecting data from your client and you are deciding the means and purpose of processing that personal data, then you are a data fiduciary. And if you are a data fiduciary, then as per the act, and as act explains by learned leaders, that you are liable to a penalty up to rupees 250 crores, and that 250 crores is also of a single clause. There are other clauses also. To combined penalty can range much more than 250 crores. Then data processor. Data processor is processes data on behalf of the fiduciary. Suppose we give data to ClearText, Google Drive, or Computex just for storage purpose. They store our data, right? ClearText store our data, Google Drive store our data, and Computex also store our data, and we do the and we decide that all the things, and our client's data is saved in the software provided by these entities, right? So they are the data processors. They are the data processors because they are not deciding the means and purpose of processing data. The means and purpose of processing data is decided by us. So Computex, ClearText, Google Drive, SAG, Infotech, everything is data processor for us.
So there's a question
Yes, sir.
in which someone is asking that is the data of individual is only covered under this act, or the data of corporate is also covered?
Only the data of individual. But the thing is, sir, if you are doing suppose you are doing the DIR3 KYC of a corporate company. In that DIR3 KYC, you collect the PAN and Aadhaar of the individual director. So in that case, the data relates to an individual. Although you are doing the work of a corporate, but the data relates to an individual that can be identified by or in relation to data. And in the act, sir, I always believe the act is very stringent penalties are imposed. So if two views are there, always take the view that is beneficial to the data protection board, that is beneficial to the government, that if that person can be identified by the PAN card or Aadhaar card, then take it as a personal data. and don't apply the corporate exemption, because we have to prove the corporate exemption. But if we had taken considered this data as a personal data, and we have given notice and taken consent, then we will be saved from the penalty. So I always request, if there is any data through which you can identify an individual, please consider as a personal data, even if it is a case of corporate, and please follow the guidelines that are given in the act. Any else question, sir? No.
No,
Okay,
sir, you
so
can continue.
we have studied 4 terms. Again, I am repeating it so that you all remember this. First is personal data. Any data through which we can identify an individual. The word used is individual. Even in corporate data, if you are able to identify an individual, then consider it as a personal data. Then data principal, the individual to whom the data relates or to whom the data belongs, right? Who can be identified in relation to such data is the data principal. Then comes the data fiduciary, the entity that decides the means and purpose of processing data. Again, I am saying not the entity that collects data. It is the entity that decides the means and purpose of processing data. If I am only collecting data and I am not doing anything on it, then I am not the data fiduciary. Then I will be just data processing, because I am not the person who is deciding the means and purpose of processing data. Clear to everyone? Then data processor. Data processor in Hindi if I call, ये खुद से कुछ भी नहीं करता है. इसको जैसा डेटा फिड्यूशियरी बोलता है वैसा डेटा प्रोसेसर करता है. Like Computex, Google Drive or Computex do nothing on our client data. They just store that data and they execute the instructions that are given by us. Right? They don't do anything from their own. So in the act, no penalty is imposed on the data processor. Data processor is the king in the act. No penalty imposed on the data processor. Then more
There's a
key terms.
question.
Yes.
Sir, forgive me, there's a question. Sir, if someone is asking, Ayush Maheshwari is asking that if we have collected the data on our behalf and we have uploaded the data on some Computex kind of a software,
Okay.
and if that software, due to some glitches of that software, if that software loses that data, then who is responsible in this case?
Yeah. Ayush ji asked the question. Ayush ji, I will cover this question in coming slides also, but I will answer it right away. Sir, in the act, nothing is imposed on the data processor. So even if there is a breach of data from the Computex or ClearText or Google Drive side, you will be responsible to the data protection board, because you are the data fiduciary and you have the legal remedy that you can file a separate legal suit on Computex or ClearText to recover the fine or penalties that are being imposed on you. But data protection board will directly fetch you. Data protection board will not catch the data processor. You can file a separate suit against the data processor for recovery of the damage that has been suffered by you. Okay, sir? Okay, perfect. Then what is consent? Consent in Hindi, it is called as sehmati. We had studied in the contracted consent, elements of a valid contract and valid consent. Now, what are the valid consent elements? We had studied in the free, that consent should be free. What is free consent? We had studied in the contracted, that consent should be free from coercion, undue influence, mistake, and misrepresentation. That we had studied in the foundation level. Right? So free consent should be free, that there should not be any pressure on the data principal. Then specific, then suppose if I am asking consent for income tax return, and in the consent I am specifying that I will require these 3 documents. So those 3 documents should be clearly specified in the consent notice for consent, that I require 3 documents like 26AS, AIS or TIS, or bank statement and salary slips for a salaried person. Informed. Then a clear informed consent should be informed to the data principal, that the data principal should clear knowledge of what data is taken and how that data will be processed. Unconditional, that there should not be any condition attached to the consent and there should not be 3-4 purpose consent combined. And unambiguous affirmative action. What it means by unambiguous affirmative action? That pre-ticked checkboxes are not valid. Many times you visit a website, there is a toggle bar, there is a pop-up that comes, and we have to by default tick that. It is by default ticked. So that by default tick checkbox won't work now. It has to be specifically ticked. Unambiguous affirmative action, not assume, must be explicit. What it means that I cannot assume that the person has given me the consent. I had to take an explicit means spasht. In Hindi, it is called spasht. I had to take an explicit consent. Means silence amounts to acceptance is not a valid term in DPDP Act. Silent amounts to acceptance was there in the Contract Act. It is not there in the DPDP Act. In DPDP Act, we have to take an explicit means स्पष्ट consent, स्पष्ट सहमति आपको लेनी है डेटा प्रिंसिपल से. अब what is the definition of processing? One of my friend was asking me, sir, मैंने तो सिर्फ डेटा कलेक्ट किया है, मैंने तो उसके ऊपर कुछ किया ही नहीं है. So collection is also a processing in the act. Processing is defined in the act. Collection, storage, use, sharing, disclosure, or any operation performed on a digital personal data. What is it? Collection. Just study the terms. First is collection. That if you are collecting, that means you are processing. That like if your client has sent you a WhatsApp bank statement, and if you have downloaded it, then you had collected it. Right? Then storage. If you had downloaded, if you had stored the data, if you had copied from a pen drive to another pen drive, that means you have stored the data. Then use. If you had used the data, then it is that you had used the data. Then sharing. If you had shared the data with any other person, then it is processing. Then disclosure. If suppose in your office there is some technical problem and you had contacted the Computex or a SAG Infotex and you had connected them on a remote desktop server like TeamViewer, Ultra Cloud, or AnyDesk or anything you use, and in that TeamViewer, Ultra Cloud, or AnyDesk, your client's personal data is visible to that Computex or ClearText or anything else that is stored in your folders. So that is disclosure. And any operation performed on digital personal data. And even after they had, even indexing is covered in the definition of processing, deletion is covered in the definition of processing, and they had intentionally used this word, any operation performed on digital personal data. Means if there is anything which they have failed to specify or they have forgot to specify, then they had written that any operation performed on digital personal data. Then what is data breach? Data breach means disclosure of data, unauthorized disclosure of data of my client to a third party, which I was not supposed to disclose, and we disclose it n number of times every day. In our office, there are no security measures. Every article has access to every folder in the office, and there is a very high chance that the article can leak that folder. And when a client comes for services to our office, he sits with the article for 2 hours and 3 hours, and he sees all the data that is in the system, and the client also sees all the data that is in the system. So this type of activities can cause data breach, unauthorized access, disclosure, loss, or destruction of personal data. This is defined as the data breach. Unauthorized access means someone who has not the access has access this. For example, your client who is sitting in office who was not supposed to look at the data of the another client has access this. Then disclosure, that you disclose the data accidentally to the Computex or SAG Infotech when you are discussing a problem on the TeamViewer. Then loss or destruction of personal data. If you have lost the personal data, for example, if you lost the personal data means that data is lost, stolen from your system. And destruction of personal data. If you have deleted that personal data and you are not able to again give back that personal data, then it is a data breach. Must be reported within 72 hours. What is mentioned in the act? Any data breach must be reported to the Data Protection Board within 72 hours from the time of detection of breach, and a immediate notification should be made to the data principal and a Data Protection Board, and a detailed description to the Data Protection Board within 72 hours. Immediate notification to the data principal, that is the person whose data is compromised, and board also. Then consent manager is a platform. It will be that is a pre-struct platform allowing individuals to manage and withdraw consent across multiple entities via one dashboard, because in the act it is specified that you cannot take the data without giving a valid notice and obtaining the consent. So consent manager will be a platform that will be employed from and for which registration will begin from November 2026. That platform will allow individuals to manage and withdraw consent across multiple entities via one dashboard. It will be a type of software where we can manage, give, and withdraw consent. Then data lifecycle management. Just an understanding, I am explaining this data lifecycle management. It is a bit technical topic. So just remember the terms that how the data lifecycle is governed. First is collection. So before collection, you must serve a notice and obtain consent. That is very important. If you had not given the notice and obtained the consent, then it is a breach of the provisions of the law. Then storage. Apply reasonable security safeguards that your data should be encrypted. What it means by encrypted? That in our office, data should not be saved by the client name. It is advisable to share the data by using a code word or a secret key that is known only to us, so that if any client who is sitting with the article is also looking at the data, he is not able to identify the data relates to whom. Then role-based access controls. I don't think 5% of us are having role-based access controls. Our first year article has access to each and every system in the organization. First year article sits with everyone in the organization. He can sit with all the seniors in the article and he's sitting with their system for hours. So role-based access control. In our office, make a team that if you are working in GST, IT, RERA, etc., make a team that all these persons will have access to the defined data. So for example, divide the clients between the articles and staff. Suppose 50-50 clients for everyone. Then that 50 clients data should be given only to that designated article or employee, and other employee or article should not have access of that. Then multi-factor authentication means just like in bank, we have a system that there are 3-4 steps. Like first is the issuer, then is the authorizer, then is the approver. So like this controls we have to establish in our office also, that a single person should not be having the authority to approve, issue and approve and authorize. And it happens in our office that the article who is or employee that is communicating with the client has all the controls. He or she has all the then processing use data strictly within the consented purpose. Now, what is for data processing? That if you had collected the data for ITR purpose, then use the data only for ITR purpose. You cannot use the data for GST purpose without fresh consent and notice. That is very important. Right now, what is happening? 60% of our clients are common in IT and GST. And what we do, we have the data from the IT that we have PAN number and all the basic details, and we use that data only for GST registration if the client says us to register for the GST. We don't ask the documents again. But now if you have a client who is your income tax client and he wants to apply for GST number, then give a notice, obtain a fresh consent, even if you are having the data in your office, because that data was collected for the income tax purposes. And this time the data is collected for the GST registration purposes. So I request all of you with folded hands that whenever this type of situation happens, please give a fresh consent notice and obtain a fresh consent. Then sharing, engage a data processor only under a valid written contract. A very important check has been given in the act that if you are sharing data with the data processor, then you have to enter into a valid contract with the data processor. That means after 13th May 2027, we have all to or not after, before 13th May 27, we all have to enter into contract with Computex or Google Drive or OneDrive or ClearText or any software you are using. Then retention. Some of us, those are practicing from the last 30 years, 35 years, they are having data of client that is 15 years old or 16 years old. Don't do that. If the client has left you and if the client is not our client anymore, just delete the data of the client after giving the notice that, sir, as you have left the services, we are going to delete your data. Keep only while the purpose is served. And large platforms, 3 years, that there is a retention schedule that has been specified of 3 years for e-commerce platforms, social media intermediaries, and online gaming platforms. What that they have to store the data for 3 years. So it is specified in the regulation. So even if I have made a Facebook account now and I delete my Facebook ID within 30 days, then Facebook has to retain my data for a minimum period of 3 years, because this 3 years is prescribed by the Act. Like in bank cases, bank have to maintain our record for a minimum period of 10 years. So bank will maintain our record for a minimum period of 10 years. Then erase when consent is withdrawn. If a client has explicitly says you, sir, I am not taking your services anymore. मुझे अब आपके साथ सर्विस नहीं, काम नहीं करना है. Then erase the data that you are having of the client. In such case, notice is also not required because client has explicitly has told you that I am not taking your services anymore, but that should be in writing. The purpose and honor eraser rights.
So one more question is there.
Yes.
Ayush is again asking that we cannot delete the data maybe because of some other laws. For example, we can wait for the assessment, at least 4 years का assessment होता है sir.
Yes, that is what I had shared when I was talking about the social media intermediaries. If there is anything prescribed under law, and that's why I had given the RBI example, that if the law has prescribed that you have to store the income tax record for 7 years or the GST records for 6 years after the annual return or the due date of filing GST review for the month of September, then you have to retain it for that specified purpose. But for example, you are doing an audit, then in audit cases, you have to retain the working papers for 7-8 years. For income tax returns, sir, we can have a 1-year policy that we will delete the data after 1 year. Any more questions, sir? No. Okay. So we will just see the data lifecycle, Mr. Sharma, data through one ITR engagement. So how we collect the data? First, before collection, we serve a privacy notice and takes a written consent before pulling PAN, Aadhaar, AIS and bank data. That is very important. Give notice and take consent. Then storage, keep the data in encrypted form and only the assigned assistant access, that is role-based access control and multi-factor authentication enabled on the firm's portal. That share should be different for issuer and for authorizer. Processing data used solely to prepare and file the return. Why solely to prepare and file the return? Because we have taken the consent only for the income tax return purpose. Sharing uploaded via Computex or ClearText, a signed data processor agreement must be there. Then retention only while needed or where another law requires it. Like Ayush ji was asking, retain only while needed as per the specified purpose or when a law says that you have to retain for a minimum period. For example, banks will retain my data for a minimum period of 10 years from the date of closure of account. The word is closure of account. So after my account closure, bank have to retain my data for 10 years as per RBI guidelines. Eraser own consent withdraw. If the client is explicitly withdrawn the consent as tell you that he is no longer associated with us, then please delete the data and don't store it. Then eraser for good in plain language. Now, this eraser is not delete or shift delete because in the act it is mentioned that the deletion should be irretrievable. What is irretrievable? That I should not be able to again retrieve the data if I had deleted it. I should keep the logs associated with the data, but the data, if I deleted it, it should not be recoverable. So don't shift delete won't work here. Shift delete से काम नहीं चलेगा. There are some techniques using which we have to delete the data. What is it? Wipe is a software which we can use. Bitracer is a software we can use. So these are the software that are available in the market for deletion of data as per DPDP standards. It will be a bit surprising for you, but as the act moves on, we have to adapt ourselves with the practices of the act. So we have to securely delete the data so that it never retrievable. Use erase all. Like in phones, pen drives, and laptops, we have a feature of erase all or factory reset and use that. And even if after factory reset, if someone is able to retrieve the data, then we have to use some more techniques that will be get embedded because there are some programmers who can retrieve the data, but we have to substantiate before the data protection board that we have taken appropriate steps. See, there are programmers and there are coders in the country that can hack anyone and that can hack anything and that can retrieve anything. But we have to show our response to the board that we have taken our best steps. Lose the key. For example, if a device had a security key, then you lose the key. You erase the key and you lose the key. Ask the provider. Like if your Computex or ClearText is storing data, and if the client has asked you to delete the data, then ask the Computex and processor also to delete the data and obtain a certificate of deletion from them that the data has been deleted. Find every copy. If the data is in backups, email, pen drives, and WhatsApp, delete that copy also. Destroy it. That happens whenever we sell an old PC or phone. How many of us do the hardware destruction, hard disk destruction? I think we just sell the PC. We have to destruct the hard disk. So this the data that is available in the hard disk is not retrievable to anyone. Then next is delete, so it can't come back. Like old computer, erase everything. Windows reset, Mac erase all. Phone or tablet, do a factory reset. Pen drive, they are cheap, just physically snap or crush them. Online data, delete it, delete the empty bins, and ask the provider in writing to delete it. That is very important, because when the data is shared online and saved online, then it is important to get a certificate from the online service provider. A file you keep, you can't fully wipe one live, keep the device password locked, so any leftover stays unreadable. Sometimes there are files which we cannot delete completely, so keep that file locked. If there are some remains of that file in our system, copies in paper, clear backups, email, pen drives, and WhatsApp to shred or burn paper. Note down what you deleted, clear backups, and also always keep a note of what you had deleted. That is very important. So it will be a bit technical for many of you, but just keep in mind that we have to delete the data in a manner that we cannot retrieve it. And in shift delete, it can be retrievable by the software personnel. But if you use softwares like Bitracer or Wipe, then it is not eraser, not recoverable. Then who's who? 3 roles in every data transaction involving a CA firm. Now, if we are a CA firm, and what are the things that are involved in the CA firm? My client is my data principal, because the data is related to that client. Clear to everyone? My client is my data principal because data relates to the client. Then I am a data fiduciary because I am deciding the means and purpose of processing of that personal data. I decide what to collect, why, and how to use it. So I am made the data fiduciary. And my vendors like ClearText, Computex, and Google Drive, these are all my data processors. Now, CA dual mandate. What the responsibility as a chartered accountant we have to fulfill? As a data fiduciary, issue privacy notice to clients. That we have to issue privacy notice to clients before collecting their data. Obtain explicit consent. Encrypt all client data. What is this encryption? Encryption is conversion of a plain text into ciphertext. That means don't store your client data in plain text. Use your codes and special keys to secure your client data so that it is not readable by anyone. Sign contract with all vendors. That is ClearText, Computex, Google Drive. Have a contract with all of them and report breaches to the data protection board within 72 hours, a detailed notification, and immediately a summary of the notification, a summary of the breach. Opportunity. Now, what opportunity are there? Data protection officer as a service for SMEs. In Act, every significant data fiduciary is required to appoint a data protection officer. So data protection officer is an opportunity for chartered accountants. Data protection impact assessment consulting and audit, that is DPIA consulting and audit. That means data protection impact assessment is an annual exercise that is to be done by the significant data fiduciary to assess the risk to the right of data principal. मतलब data principal के right को क्या खतरा है वो assess करने के लिए data protection impact assessment होता है. तो we have to do it if you are a significant data fiduciary. कंसल्ट मैनेजर सेटअप और एडवाइजरी एक्ट में लिखा है कि टू 2 करोड़ से ज्यादा की पेड अप कैपिटल एंड यू फॉर्म अ बॉडी कॉर्पोरेट, देन यू कैन बी अ कंसल्ट मैनेजर. यूजेस 2 करोड़ से मोर देन 2 करोड़ नेटवर्थ. व्हाट यूजेस नेटवर्थ. देन ग्रीवेंस रिड्रेसल आउटसोर्सिंग. एवरी डेटा फिड्यूशियरी, कितना भी छोटा आदमी हो, उसको ग्रीवेंस रिड्रेसल मैकेनिज्म अपने ऑफिस में बनाना पड़ेगा कि डेटा प्रिंसिपल को कोई अगर समस्या होगी तो डेटा प्रिंसिपल उस समस्या पे कैसे रिस्पॉन्ड करेगा. तो वो ग्रीवेंस रिड्रेसल आउटसोर्सिंग जो है वो आप कर सकते हैं. डीपीडीपी कंप्लायंस ऑडिट्स आप कर सकते हैं. एक्ट में डेटा ऑडिट लिखा है, पर डेटा ऑडिट में एज ऑफ नाउ नथिंग इज प्रिस्क्राइब दैट हु कैन डू इट. So that's why the institute is taking lot more steps. The data audit comes in the domain of chartered accountants, and chartered accountants can do this data audit. Then notice and valid consent that we had discussed. Consent must be free, specific, informed, then unambiguous, unconditional. What is the threshold of significant data fiduciary? So threshold of significant data fiduciary, as of now, nothing is obtained and nothing is notified as a significant data fiduciary. Central government will notify central significant data fiduciary based on the sensitivity of personal data processed and volume and risk to the right of data principle. I assume that all the banks will be significant data fiduciary. It is my understanding all the e-commerce websites will be significant data fiduciaries. Notice and valid consent. Consent must be free, specific, informed, unconditional, and ambiguous. This is the first safeguard that we have to take as a chartered accountant. Notice and valid consent. Now, what is the example here? Ram files ITR for Mr. Sharma. Before accessing AIS or TIS data, RAM must give a written privacy notice and get explicit documented consent for that specific assessment year. What it means that before accessing AIS or TIS data, we have to take a consent from the client that we will access the AIS or TIS data for this specific assessment year. Why? Because the AIS or TIS data doesn't belong to us, it belongs to the client. The old engagement letter and what we were doing in the old thing, we were saying in the engagement letter, I authorize you to represent me is insufficient. Where you are representing and for what you are representing, that we have to specify. Then safeguard 2 is purpose limitation and data minimization. What is this? Data collected for one purpose cannot be used for another without fresh consent. That I explained that if you are using the data for ITR, collected the data for ITR, then you cannot use for GST without fresh consent. Data minimization, collect only what is necessary. Collect only what is necessary. You cannot say to the client, sir, whatever documents you have with you for the ITR purpose, kindly send me. हम यही बोलते हैं उन्हें, सर आपके पास जो भी हो आप भेज दो, जो मेरे काम का होगा मैं रख लूंगा, जो मेरे काम का नहीं होगा वो मैं छोड़ दूंगा. This practice won't work. Now we have to clearly specify what document we want with justification for the same. Stop the just in case practice immediately. Then violation, do not do this. What? Using client data to cross-sell wealth management or insurance product. There are many of us friends and fellows who are doing the insurance consulting and advisory business. So I request if any one of them is having the data of the client that has been come from the income tax purpose or GST purpose, please take a fresh consent by giving a notice if you are using that income tax or GST data for advisory purposes. Without fresh consent is a direct DPDP violation, penalty may be levied. Then technical and security measures, we had already discussed this. Role based access control कि ऑफिस में कोई भी स्टाफ है उसको जितना काम दिया है उतना ही डेटा उसको एक्सेस करने दो. And maintain a role based access control. Multi factor authentication, एग्जीक्यूट ऑथराइजेशन और अप्रूवर एक ही इंसान के हाथ में मत दो, सबको डिफरेंट डिफरेंट रूल्स दीजिए. इनक्रिप्ट ऑल क्लाइंट डेटा, इनक्रिप्ट एट रेस्ट. लैपटॉप एंड ड्राइव्स में जब सेव्ड है तब भी उसे इनक्रिप्ट करिए, और जब आप ईमेल करते हैं या व्हाट्सएप पे शेयर करते हैं तब भी उसे इनक्रिप्ट कर दिए. वाई? बिकॉज मेनी टाइम्स हम देखते हैं ग्रुप पे व्हाट्सएप पे कोई मैसेज आता है और फिर 1-2 घंटे बाद कोई डिलीट कर देता है. Why? Because that data was not supposed to be sent to that particular group, but data was sent to that particular group, and now nothing happens. But after the DPDP, if you had send your client X ITR to client Y or to a group accidentally, then it is a personal data breach, and there is a penalty of up to rupees 250 crores of a single violation. So I request you to please encrypt all the client data. If you are sending the client data on WhatsApp or email, please use a password for the same. And please share the password in a different email, via a different email or WhatsApp, so that if by chance the email lands into the wrong recipient hand, then the data is not leaked, because it will require a password to open. Then breach response plan, written protocol should be there in the organization, that how we can detect the breach and how we can contain the breach. Contain the breach means how we can isolate the affected systems from the network. Then notify Data Protection Board of India. How we notify to the Data Protection Board of India? That we have to notify the Data Protection Board of India within 72 hours. So that 72 hours notification is required. Then notify clients. We have to notify the client's data principal and remediate. immediate notification to data principal and data protection board, and 72-hour detailed notification to data protection board. Then managing data processors, your vendors. If your vendor suffers a breach involving client data, that was the question asked by Ayush Maheshwari ji. Sir, what happens if the ClearText or Computex does a breach? Am I liable? Yes. You, the CFM, are held liable. The rule, the return data processing agreement is mandatory with every vendor before sharing any client data. And whenever you are doing the agreement, please make sure that the indemnity clause is there, that the data processor will indemnify you if any damage is caused to you as a result of the negligence or data breach by the data processor. Common data processor, ClearText, Computex, Google Drive, OneDrive. In scanning, many of us use doc scanner, Kagas, PDF scanner, practice management software as a service, that whatever tools you are using for paper use basis, these are all software as a service. Then penalty schedule. The most important and the most surprising thing of the whole act. Failure to implement reasonable security safeguards, breach of data. Maximum penalty is up to rupees 250 crores. Now, what is this reasonable security safeguards? Encryption, role-based access control, multi-factor authentication, segregation of duties. These are all the security safeguards that we have to employ in our office. Failure to notify breach to the data protection board or data principals. As we have discussed that we have to notify any instance of breach immediately to the data protection board and data principal, and a detailed report within 72 hours to the data protection board. So failure to notify breach to the board or the data principal, a separate penalty of 200 crores. That means a 250 crores for failure to take reasonable security safeguards, and after failure to take security safeguards, if there is a breach, and if you are not reported that the breach to the data principal or to the data protection board, then the separate penalty of 200 crores is there. So total 450 crores, up to 450 crores might be imposed in this case. Then non-compliance with children data obligation. In the act, children is any person who is below the age of 18 years. And in the case of children, you have to take a verifiable parental consent. What is verifiable parental consent? That we have to verify whether the parent is the parent of the children. That means first we have to take the ID proof of the children, and from the ID proof of children, we have to ascertain that the parent, that child is the child of that parent, and then we have to take the ID of parent, and we have to verify that the parent is above 18 and parent is the legal parent of the children. So failure to non-compliance with children's data obligations. Now, in this case, suppose if instead of a major, the data breach relates to the children, and you have not reported the data breach to the data principal and or the data protection board, then the penalty will be 250 plus 200 plus 150 plus 200. Sorry, so total will be 650 crores of penalty. Now, non-compliance by significant data fiduciaries. Ayush ji is asked that significant data fiduciaries, what are they? So significant data fiduciaries are the entities that will be notified by the central government on the basis of sensitivity of personal data processed, volume of data processed, and risk to the right of data principal. So if the data fiduciary is a significant data fiduciary, then a separate 150 crore penalty, up to 150 crore penalty is there for the significant data fiduciary also. Breach of any other provision of the act or rules. If there is any breach which is not specified in the provisions that we have specified, then the breach of any other provision of the act or the rules, the penalty is 50 up to 50 crores. Then breach of duties by data principal. Now, what is the breach of duties by data principal? Means if there is a breach done by the data principal, that the data principal is making false complaints, data principal is not giving correct data to the data fiduciary, and if the data fiduciary is unnecessarily harassing the data fiduciary, then penalty up to 10,000 can be imposed on the data principal. Okay, so that was all about the penalties that we studied. And these all are different penalties. That means cumulative penalty can be imposed, and these are per instance of breach. For example, in a single year, if you have made 10 instances of breach, then all these penalties can be imposed 10 times in a year. Is it clear? Okay. Then DPDP rules. These are the rules that were notified in November 25. Key operational rules. Some of the rules that we should know as a chartered accountant are: plain language notice, that the notice should be given in the plain language. If we are in like in CIRC, the notice should be given in English or Hindi. So all the clients will be covered. So notice should be given in English as well as Hindi. Or if the client is not well versed with English, then must be in Hindi. So notice should be given in the language that is understandable by the clients. Children data, verifiable parental consent, that I had already explained that in children data we have to take the parental consent and we have to verify that the parent is the parent. Consent manager, that also I had explained that it must be an Indian company with net worth greater than or equal to 2 crores and it should be incorporated as a body corporate and then it can get registered with the data protection board. Grievance timeline. Now this is the timeline that every data fiduciary should have a grievance redressal mechanism. ग्रीवेंस रिट्रेसल मैकेनिज्म मतलब शिकायत समाधान का एक सिस्टम होना चाहिए जिससे डेटा प्रिंसिपल की शिकायत का समाधान हो पाए एंड एक्नॉलेजमेंट रिजॉल्व विद इन 90 डेज. मतलब डेटा प्रिंसिपल को 90 डेटा फिड्यूशियरी को 90 डेज दिया है एक्ट में टू रिजॉल्व द ग्रीवेंस ऑफ डेटा प्रिंसिपल. And if the data principal is unsatisfied with the resolution given by the data fiduciary, then the data principal can appeal to the data protection board. Legitimate uses, there are some cases in which data can be processed without consent. For example, when the data has been provided voluntarily, means मैंने खुद से दिया है, किसी ने मुझसे मांगा नहीं है. Then, but in voluntary cases also, if it relates to business purposes, then it is advisable to take the consent. Data may be processed without consent for state subsidies. If the state is giving you a subsidy or a license or a benefit like ration card, then state can process. State means the government. Government can process it without consent. But that should be also restricted to what is required for giving the subsidy or benefit to the individual. Then medical emergency. Suppose if I met an accident and in the accident the person is trying to call my relatives from seeing my phone last call history, then in that case DPDP Act won't be applied because the person is calling my relatives for my safety and for my benefit of medical emergency. And employment means the data that is used by the employer of employee. In that case consent is not required because many times employer keep a track on the employee. So if in that thing consent is required, then employer will not be able to track the employee. Then data localization, government may restrict some countries in which data cannot be transferred. Like right now we all are using AI and all the AI, most of the AI tools are having their servers in foreign countries. So as of now, nothing problem, but after the DPDP Act has become fully operational, suppose the government has notified some countries that you cannot transfer data to that country, and if the AI is storing their data in that country, then they have to bring that data to India. DPO as a service, data protection officer, I had explained it is for a significant data fiduciary. DPO is for a significant data fiduciary. So significant data fiduciaries must appoint a data protection officer is an individual based in India. Now, one thing we can understand that the DPO is an individual and he has to be based in India. Why CAs are perfect for this role? Because they are the trusted advisor of their clients. They have the audit expertise. They are regulatory literate. And DPIA consulting in data audit, that is data protection impact assessment. That is also an annual exercise that is to be done by the significant data fiduciary. So significant data fiduciaries must conduct a data protection impact assessment annually. Now, what we had included here that the significant data fiduciaries must conduct a data protection impact assessment annually. That means an annual impact assessment must be conducted for significant data fiduciaries. And what we do in data protection impact assessment, first we understand the data flow, how the data moves, right, from collection, processing, storage, and deletion. These are the four major steps. When you collect the data, how you process the data, how you store the data, and how you delete the data. Then risk identification. In DPIA, we have to identify the risks that are to the rights of data principals and obtain the vulnerabilities in the data life cycle. Mitigation strategy, recommend actionable controls, develop, prioritize implementation roadmap. That how can we mitigate this risk? It is a very important thing of data protection, impact assessment, and fourth DPIA report, a formal report for management board of directors and the data protection board, like an audit report. So data protection impact assessment will be submitted to the board of directors, to the data protection board, and it will contain the significant observations that has been observed. Qualifications of data auditor not yet prescribed. CAs are perfectly positioned as the default choice. Now the qualifications of data auditor are not yet prescribed in the Act. So, but as the institute is trying hard, so we are very confident that the CAs will be designated as a data auditor with prescribed qualifications. 6-step DPIA methodology. Now, how you do the data protection impact assessment? It is mandatory for significant data fiduciaries. Scope and map processing, define the purpose, data categories, and the full data flow across the life cycle. That is very important. We have to define the purpose, that for what purpose we are collecting the data. Data categories, what are the categories of data? Health data, financial data, biometrics data, sensitive data, and the full data flow across the data life cycle. Data life cycle is abhi we have studied: collection, processing, storage, and retention. Necessity and proportionality, test the lawful basis, validity of consent, and apply data minimization. That means necessity, whether the data has been collected is necessary, and whether it is proportionate to the specified purpose, that there is no over collection. Then stakeholder consultation, engage data principals, processors, and the DPO to surface real world concerns. That is also very important that we include all the stakeholders in the DPIA. Identify and assess risk. Identify the risk and assess the risk, rate likelihood into impact of privacy harms, that what is the likelihood and into impact of privacy harms, concern gaps, and breach exposure. So this is how we can assess the risk. Mitigation and control, stress risk via encryption, multi-factor authentication, role-based access control, and data processing agreements that we had already studied. Report sign off and review, document findings, secure board DPO sign off, and schedule periodic audit. That means give to the board significant findings and secure board DPO sign off and schedule periodic audit. This is what covered in the data protection impact assessment methodology. Then DPI in practice, how you do the data protection impact assessment in practice. Scope and map, list the purpose before migrating 500 clients to a cloud practice management tool. I am migrating 500 of my clients to a cloud practice management tool, and I want to assess the impact that would have on my clients' data. List the purpose, data types, PAN, Aadhaar, financials, and the flow, firm, software as a service, servers, and the backups. Don't just in case fields, confirm every data point is necessary and consent back. Don't collect the data as required. For every collected data, there should be a consent notice sent and a consent obtained. Then consultation, consult the partners, the software as a service vendor, and the DPO, data risk and required controls. So contact with the processor or system as a software as a service vendor. Then assess risk. Evaluate server location, sub-processors, breach exposure, and weak access control. This is a bit technical, I can understand. Evaluate server location. If the server is located in a country where we don't have good relations, then the risk is high. Sub-processor, if the sub-processor is a layman employed by the data processor, then the risk is high. Breach exposure, that what is the breach exposure, and weak access controls like no role-based access controls. Mitigation, mandate encryption, role-based access control, multi-factor authentication, and signed data processor agreement. Sign off and review. Document the data protection impact assessment, obtain partner or DPO sign off, and schedule a periodic audit. That is very important. And whenever you do a data impact assessment, there should be a report and document the data protection impact assessment and obtain partner or DPO sign and schedule a periodic audit. Any questions, sir?
Not yet, sir. Not anymore.
Okay. More opportunities. Consent manager, I had already discussed that consent manager is a platform through which individuals can manage, give, and withdraw consent. Consent management for consent manager entity, there should be a minimum net worth of 2 crore rupees, and the entity should be incorporated as a body corporate, that is Indian company. And opportunity for grievance redressal. Sir, this is also a very big opportunity in that, because every data fiduciary will be required to have a grievance redressal. Very big opportunity. Every data fiduciary must have a grievance mechanism regardless of size. कितना ही छोटा हो कितना ही बड़ा हो, उनमें grievance redressal mechanism they have to make. And many firms cannot employ a full-time grievance redressal officer. So what they will do, they will outsource it to a virtual grievance redressal officer. And when they outsource it to a virtual grievance redressal officer, that virtual grievance officer will be most likely to the chartered accountant. Resolve within 90 days. It is given in the rule 14 that every grievance should be resolved within 90 days. 63 million plus MSMEs cannot manage this in-house. There are, I think, more than 80 million MSMEs, and out of those 80 million MSMEs, 63 plus million MSMEs cannot manage this in-house because the costing is very high. Outsource to CA firm, and what they will do if they cannot manage it in-house, they will outsource to a CA firm. Then information system audit standard, just for your knowledge purpose, is an audit standard that is issued by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. ISA's Information System Audit Standards 430, and in which the 430 covers audit of digital personal data. So this ISS 430 covers digital personal data. That is only for your information. Then audit data, the cross-sell problem. An example we will see, CA Mehta collects detailed financial data from ABC Limited during a statutory authorized statutory audit assignment. Now here the data is collected from company ABC Private Limited during a statutory audit assignment. 6 months later, Mehta uses that same data to pitch wealth management and insurance products to the promoters. Since Mr. Mehta has used the corporate data that was belonging to the promoters, so it was belonging to the promoter, so it is a personal data because it identifies an individual. Mehta uses the same data to pitch wealth management and insurance products to the promoters without seeking any fresh consent. So in this case, the DPDP Act will be applicable because the data is identifying an individual. Violation section 6, purpose limitation, audit data used for cross-selling, DPDP violation, because you cross-sell your data, that you should not use the audit data for a wealth management and insurance products. Penalty up to 50 crores because no notice or consent is taken. If leaked to third party, then up to 250 crores. The right way, obtain separate documented consent specifically for financial advisory or insurance services before any contract. Then the vendor data breach, CA firm Modi and Associates store all 500 client and vendor on Google Drive. Now here the CA firm stores all the document on the Google Drive, and there is no data processing agreement with the Google. They have no agreement with the Google. A cyber breach occurs, client data is exposed publicly, and client data is exposed to the whole public. So step 1 is notify data protection board and the data principal immediately. And step 2 is notify data protection board within 72 hours. There is some mapping mistake there. Step 1, notify all 500 clients without delay and the data protection board. And step 2, notify DPB detailed within 72 hours. Step 3, face 250 crores, failure to take reasonable security safeguards, first penalty, and second, failure to notify the board or the data protection board, second penalty. No written agreement, data processing agreement with Google, so no security safeguards taken. Always executes data protection agreement storing client data with any third party. That is very important. Bulk SMS marketing trap, that has happened that CF Ravi files returns for 300 plus clients. Ravi files returns for 300 plus clients. He collects their phone numbers during ITR engagement. He then sends a bulk SMS to all clients promoting a new tax saving fixed deposit product. Can Ravi do it? No, because he had collected their phone numbers for ITR engagement. So Mr. Ravi cannot share it for a fixed deposit tax saving product. This is a purpose limitation violation. Section 6, phone numbers were collected for ITR filing only. So using them for FD marketing, repurposing without consent is not valid. Ravi must obtain fresh explicit marketing consent for each client. Any questions, sir?
Yes, sir. There is one more question.
Hmm.
With the implementation of DPDP, this is going to increase the cost of service, be it CA firm or for the client, increase in capex for IT infrastructure and its maintenance. So, sir,
Yeah.
is there any, apart from the opportunities, I mean, is there anything, any other revenue generating thing that we can do?
Just a minute. With the implementation of DPDP, this is going to increase the cost of service. It will be at a CA firm or for the client. Increase in capex for IT infrastructure and its maintenance. Yes, sir. Of course, because we have to implement all these protocols and all these guidelines. So, Santana Krishna sir, yes, there will be increase in the cost, but sir, as a chartered accountant, there will be some increase in our IT infrastructure and its maintenance, but the fees that we will recover from our client will compensate for the investment that we will make in the firm for DPDP compliance. Whether mails or message for client will be acceptable mode for consent. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can give the mail. You can give the notice on mail and take the consent on mail, and you can also take the give the notice on SMS and take the consent on SMS. But for that, you have to maintain a log. You have to maintain a log for this. You have to maintain a log for the same. For this, you have to maintain the log for the same. That you can display to the data protection board that you have given the notice and you have taken the consent. For this, log should be there, otherwise you cannot quantify it. Sir, can you explain the slide just before the case study, one slide? Just a minute. Yes, Bajaj Finance and all will be stopped after the implementation of the act, because Bajaj Finance and if Bajaj Finance is calling us and regularly without consent, then we can complain or make a complaint of the Bajaj Finance to the Data Protection Board. Slide just before the sir. What you don't understand, can you please tell me? Because the whole slide, I think it will take a lot of time. PJ sir.
So you can continue. I will let you know when the question
Okay.
is. Okay, he's saying he is understood now. So we can carry on.
Okay. Great, sir. Great. So CA review files returns for 300 clients that we had covered. So this is the question and I want you all to answer this. I want the responses in the chat box. The maximum penalty for failure to implement reasonable security safeguards under the DPDP Act is how much? Tell me. I want the answer in the chat box. Maximum penalty for failure to implement reasonable security safeguards. I had received, everyone is giving perfect answer. The penalty is 250 crores. And now tell me what happens if after this failure to take reasonable security safeguard, the person is also not notified the same to the data principal and the data protection board. Then 250 plus 200, absolutely correct. Then there is a question, how can 250 plus 200, sir? Because they not notified the 250 plus 200 because they not notified the data protection board or the data principal. How can organizations balance regulatory compliance with delivering seamless customer experience? Sir, first we have to change our Mrs. Manvita ma'am. First we have to change our practice. If we make our organization compliant, then we can make our client also compliant. And first we have to make ourselves compliant, and then we can earn revenue by making our client compliant. Okay, so next is, now we will move to the next slide. ClearText processes your client's ITR data on your instructions. Under the DPDP Act, ClearText is what a ClearText is? ClearText is a data processor because ClearText is not deciding the means and purpose of processing personal data. ClearText is processing data on my instructions, and ClearText will be the data processor and I will be the data fiduciary because I am processing that, I am deciding the means and purpose of processing of that personal data. But if clear text is also deciding the means and purpose of processing personal data, then there will be joint data fiduciaries. I will also be a data fiduciary and clear text will also be a data fiduciary. But here clear text is not deciding the means and purpose of processing personal data. So clear text won't be the data fiduciary in this case. There is a comment in the chat box. So how practical is to implement this in real for 250 crores from a SME or CA is recoverable? Satyenji, you are absolutely right. But the thing is, it is not a flat penalty of 250 crores. It will be up to 250 crores. And that penalty will be imposed based on the sensitivity of personal data you process, based on your behavior with the data protection board, based on the repetitive nature of the offense of the mistake that we make. And of course, penalty is high, but penalty will be levied based on the condition of the data fiduciary. And the thing is, it has been the penalties are taken from the Europe GDPR. So in that GDPR, there were penalties of this range only. So they have taken these penalties only. Now we'll move to the next slide. Under the DPDP rules, a data fiduciary must resolve grievances within. We have talked about the grievance redressal mechanism. Tell me the answer. Under the DPDP rules 2025, the data fiduciary must resolve grievance within how much time? 90 days. Perfect answer from all of you. Grievance redressal should be 90 days and acknowledgement of grievance should be given within 48 hours. Don't get confused. Grievance should be redressed within 90 days and acknowledgement of grievance should be provided within 48 hours. Okay? Perfect. Then another quiz. Concern manager registration requires minimum net worth of how much? I had explained it. Minimum net worth of how much? 2 crore. Absolutely right. And it should be a body corporate incorporated in India. Then data protection board impact assessment for significant data protection impact assessment for significant data fiduciary is required. How much? What is the frequency? Once only, every 3 years, annually, or when a breach has happened. What is this? Perfect answer annually. Perfect answer annually. We have 4-5 answers in the chat box. Thank you all for making this section interactive. Perfect answer annually. So data protection impact assessment also for significant data fiduciary annually. Second, data audit for significant data fiduciary annually. So two opportunities are there and significant data fiduciary has to appoint a data protection officer and a data auditor. So two professional opportunities, data protection officer for a CA, data audit as a data auditor, and third one, data protection impact assessment. Okay. Now there is a scenario. Tell me the answer. CA Priya uses a free online PDF tool to merge client Aadhaar docs. We all are using it and we are all uploading that Aadhaar card to that free online PDF tool, commonly known as I Love PDF. Am I right? The tool's privacy policy says data may be used for product improvement. If you check the policy of I Love PDF, it says that your data may be used for product improvement. That is to train I Love PDF. Who is liable? Tell me in the chat box who is liable. Tell me in the chat box. CA Priya is responsible. Absolutely. Why? Because CA Priya is the data fiduciary and Ayush ji has rightly said that I Love PDF is the processor. Then under the DPDP Act, a data fiduciary must erase personal data when the financial year ends, exact 10 years have passed, the purpose is no longer served, or the consent is withdrawn, or only when a complaint is filed. Yes, consent is when the consent is withdrawn or the purpose is fulfilled subject to legal retention. That there should not be a extended legal retention. A written contract between a data fiduciary and a data processor is mandated by that I will answer because it is a section related MCQ. So, written contract between a data fiduciary and a data processor is mandated by Section 8 of the Act, and Section 8 talks about the safeguards that the data fiduciary has to take. Section 12 is about the right of data principal. Section 12 talks about the right of the data principal to correct and update data. Right? Section 12 is not relation to data fiduciary. Section 12 is related to data principal. Data principal has 4 rights in the Act from Section 11 to Section 14. That is right to access his data, right to update data, right to correct data, right to grievance redressal, and right to nominate. These are the 4 rights given to the data principal under the Act. Then under Rule 8 and third schedule, large e-commerce or social media platforms greater than or equal to 2 crore users must erase inactive user data after. I had explained this in 2 lines. Can anyone answer this? Large e-commerce or social media platforms having users greater than 2 crores are required to keep the data for a minimum period of something that I had explained. I had given the example of Facebook, if you can recollect. 3 years. Yes, exactly. 3 years is the right answer. And if that data, instead of this social media platforms and e-commerce, if it is an online gaming platform with 50 lakhs users, then also it is 3 years. Very good responses from your side. Now, before erasure under the third schedule, the data principal must give prior notice of at least. There is a requirement in the Act that if the data is deleted, if the specified purpose is served, and if the data fiduciary wants to delete data, then the data fiduciary cannot delete the data automatically. Data fiduciary has to give a intimation to the data principal that I am going to delete your data after this time if no response is received from you. And if the data fiduciary principal responds that no, I don't delete my data, I want to continue processing, then they cannot delete it. Can anyone answer it? It's 48 hours, yes, complete. It's 48 hours notice is required in the Act. So 48 hours notice we have to give in the Act. Right? A data protection impact assessment is mandatory for. Answer it. Every data processor, significant data fiduciaries, only government bodies, or data principal. Please answer this. Have you answered this? SDF, yes, significant data fiduciary. We can see computer. Yes, you can see my computer screen, but no sensitive personal data is there, sir. Ayush sir, you can see my computer screen because I don't know why the PPT was get hanged, but there is no data breach. I had not breached any personal data of any client. So that's why the data does not relate to any person. It is relating to me and I am sharing it voluntary. So the DPDP Act won't be applicable in this case. Okay, significant data fiduciaries. For significant data fiduciaries, it is mandatory. You are answered this. Okay. Now the next is data principal right to seek correction and erasure of personal data flows from. I had just explained it 2 minutes back. Can anyone answer it? Data, yes, section 12, absolutely right. Absolutely right. Three answers we had received. Absolutely right. Data principles, right to seek correction and erasure of personal data flows from section 12. Absolutely correct answer. Thank you so much for this answer. Then what we have to do now? We had covered all the questions. Now what we have to do going forward, our 30-day action plan. Week 1, first we have to map all data and update engagement letters with privacy notices. That is very important that all our engagement letters, along with the engagement letters, we should send a privacy notice, and that privacy notice should be sent separately with engagement letter. It should not be embedded inside the engagement letter. Then execute return data processing agreements with all the vendors like ClearText, Google Drive, etc. We have to execute a return data processing agreements with all these vendors. Then week 2, implement role-based access control in our firm and enable multi-factor authentication on all system. That is also very important that we have to implement role-based access control in our firm, that every article or employee should have role only to the limited access they are getting. Encrypt client data at rest and in transit. For encrypting client data in rest, there is a standard called Advanced Encryption Standard 256, and for transit there is a transport layer security, that is TLS 1.3. These are very technical standards that you can follow. Password protect all mails. Never share a mail without a password protection, because if that mail is sent to someone else, then it might compromise the confidentiality of your client data. Draft a data breach response protocol and appoint a grievance officer. Very important. We all have to appoint a grievance officer. So if we want to appoint a grievance officer, first we have to update our practices so that the grievance officer can be of some value to us. Then most important, identify top 5 clients in your firm to pitch for DPO, data protection officer, or data protection impact assessment services, because significant data fiduciary is mandatory to appoint a data protection officer and to conduct a data protection impact assessment. And data protection impact assessment is an annual opportunity. So I request all to please have advantage of this. Now, 3 key takeaways. Your CA firm is the data fiduciary because update engagement letters and security practices today. Non-compliance penalty up to 250 crores or even more for different offenses. This is a statutory obligation, not optional. The DPDP creates new revenue streams. What are they? Data protection officer, data protection impact assessment, consent manager, grievance redressal officer. So these are all the opportunities that are being covered in the Act. Now, this is my contact. I am also sharing my QR code. You can directly scan it as a contact. Just a minute. This is my QR code. You can scan it and contact me for any purpose. I am voluntarily sharing it. No breach of personal data involved here. You can scan it. I had shared the QR code. Have you scanned it? Sir, is it visible? QR code is visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay, okay. So I hope those who were in need of contact, they have scanned it. And if anyone wants to connect on any social platform, then you can connect. Is it visible, sir?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Yeah. If anyone wants to connect, we can connect on this LinkedIn or FB, so that we can have an idea of the professional developments that are taking place in various parts of the CIRC, that we can stay in touch and get connected. Okay. So that was all from my side. If any questions still, you can put in the chat box. I am happy to answer this. You all were so attentive, so thanks for that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for such an insightful and thought-provoking session on DPDP Act.
Thank
Your
you, sir.
explanation of the various nuances of the Act and our professional responsibilities, etc., under the DPDP framework is very extremely valuable to us. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sir, if it's not a big concern, can you please share your PPT?
Yes, sir. I will share. Where I can share? Can I share it here?
I think you can share it here.
Just a minute. Just a minute. I'm sharing. Yes, sir. I think I shared it. Please confirm me if the same is visible to you.
No, sir. I've not received it in the chat box.
I think I'm not able to send it.
So you can attach a file in the chat box.
Again, I'll send it. I'm doing same thing. I had attached in the chat box only.
Yes, sir. Now we are able to see it.
Okay, perfect. I
Thank
think
you.
earlier it was sent to you as a moderator. I think I made that mistake earlier that I had not done it to everyone.
No, so actually, even I did not receive it, sir.
Okay, no
And
issue. So
yeah,
all are issued. So
now
thank you everyone for the for your responses and your responses, and Satyapriya ji involvement was so active so that the session remained a two-way discussion. I
my
hope
pleasure.
I hope I had added some value to everyone.
Definitely, sir. A lot of value you have added today.
And the thing is now just we had completed the session. Now we have to change our practices also so that we can comply with the act and we can save ourselves from penalties, and then we can monetize by saving our clients also.
Yes, sir. Actually, comparing to other businesses, no, it is going to affect our field, our profession a lot, comparing to other professions. So
Yes,
we will,
because we are taking sensitive data from the client.
yes.
Absolutely, sir.
All right, sir.
All right, sir.
I think people have started leaving now, so we can.
Should I end?
Yes, sir.